Hey everyone, welcome to the program WRSA Radio. I am your host G1 as always. I hope you're having a good week. Been a busy one for me getting back from vacation. It can be a chore when you come back. But I did have a good one. I got a chance to see some old friends and make a few new ones, so it was great. I got to see some family, which is always nice. So overall it was a great time off, decompress, kind of get away from things, not have to deal with emails and cell phones and all that good stuff. But when you are out for a week, you come back to a pile of things to do, and that's like an immediate splash of cold water, and it can kind of drain you very quickly of the reset that you did while you were away. But that is modern life, I guess. So it is what it is. So what are we on about this week on the show? Well, I guess we have to discuss the big story this week, which was the guilty verdict in the kangaroo trial of President Donald Trump for the so-called hush money accusations. And keep in mind, the money and the payments were never illegal. It's not illegal. The agreement on the NDA between Daniels and Trump was not illegal. Nothing about this entire situation was illegal. What this all boiled down to was that Trump was accused of falsifying documents by calling the payment to his attorney a legal fee, when he apparently was supposed to classify it, I don't know, as something else. I guess he was supposed to say that it was a hush money payment to his attorney. I don't know. I don't get that. Nothing was ever clearly explained exactly how that payment is supposed to be recorded in your general ledger as anything but a legal payment. It was paid to Michael Cohen. It wasn't paid directly to Stormy Daniels. I also find it odd that nothing was made of the fact that the payment that was made by Trump to Cohen for this NDA also included another amount for a separate legal settlement. So it was two payments together. The settlement was the sum of money that Cohen actually took from Trump, part of that money, and he didn't pass it on to the intended party. In other words, he stole that money out of the payment. That's all very telling. Trump pays Cohen more than the hush money on just the Stormy Daniels case. That was money that was supposed to be passed on to Daniels, but he lumps it together with another payment for a separate case, and it's called a legal fee, which is 100% honest. It's exactly what it is. Again, how else is he supposed to classify that? And then Cohen takes part of this money intended for this other case, and he just pockets it. And nothing is done to him. He's simply walking away from this case entirely untouched. And the last time I heard, fraud and theft were criminal charges, and Cohen, by his own admission on the witness stand, admitted to stealing $30,000. He should have been cuffed before he could leave the courthouse. But we didn't see that. No, we get a guilty verdict in this case where the jury was basically backed into a corner by the judge to the point that there was basically no other decision that they could make. There's so many grounds for appeal on this case, and it's going to go right to the Court of Appeals, and I suspect it will go to the Supreme Court if it can. I'm not sure the route that it can take there, but even the jury decision itself is grounds for appeal. The judge told the jury that they did not have to be in agreement on what the so-called crime Trump committed was. They only had to decide if he forced someone to falsify business documents to hide the so-called crime. Well, that's bullshit. If the underlying principle is that a crime was committed and you are covering it up, then there needs to be some kind of consensus and agreement that a crime was indeed committed. You don't cover up something that's not illegal. There are no laws against NDAs and the so-called hush money. If that's the case, then almost every single member of Congress is guilty and they need to go to jail. They have an entire fund to pay for non-disclosure agreements. And you don't put that out there because then you have violated the NDA. That's the deal. Both parties agree not to discuss the situation as part of the non-disclosure agreement. So if there was no underlying criminal act, then there was no falsification of documents to hide something that was not illegal. Again, how do you classify payments to your lawyer as anything but legal expenses? And the case alleges that this NDA was somehow a violation of election laws, of which the Federal Elections Commission has already expressed no willingness to file charges on that. They do not agree that it was illegal. In other words, they don't see a crime here. This case is the first in history where a state prosecutor has filed election charges against a candidate for federal elections like this. And that in and of itself is a smoking gun to this being targeted prosecution and abuse of power. It's setting a very bad standard for us, and it's opening the door for the retribution to be crushing. At least it should be. That's what should be happening, what we should be seeing in the coming months. Prosecutors all over the country should be ramping up charges for Joe Biden and every single leftist candidate out there. Every single sitting Congress creature should be in the crosshairs for criminal charges, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris included. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. Let them reap what they sow. Let them fend off an endless assault of charges and legal actions. And if these are the rules that you want to play by, then you get what you frickin' deserve. But we're not going to see that, however, because, well, we haven't seen it yet. And there's nothing preventing that from taking place right now. Places like Texas and Florida and other real red states should already have cases in play, tit for tat. But they don't. And that tells me that they likely never will. They're all more than willing to watch it happen to Trump because no one really wants him in the mix anyway. None of them really want him in office. They fear him. Now, at least you think that I'm just a Trump sniffer here and I don't ask questions and I just support him. Let me explain that. They fear him not because they think he's actually seeking to do much of what he says he's going to do. No, they fear him because they know that his followers believe that he's going to do those things. They fear that he will listen to them on some of those things that they're demanding, and he will try and actually accomplish even just a few of them. Just a few of the things that he's promised, even any of them. They can't have that. He's promised things that they can't accept at all. Even a little compromise on those plank items is so destructive to their real goals and agenda that they can't even begin to consider a token level of movement and acquiescence to Trump. They can't have anything populist at all. They have a serious problem on their hands now because there's no indication in the polls that Trump is facing any kind of slowdown resulting from this show trial. And of course, polls are polls. You can believe whatever you want with those, I guess, but you would think that it would be manipulated to show some kind of bump for Biden, and it's not. In fact, it's likely having the opposite effect. This particular trial was the only one that really had a chance of impacting the election because it's given the media and the Biden caregivers the one thing that they wanted to label Trump with, and that is the title of convicted felon. The other trials are all being pushed off and postponed, and none of that stuff's going to get resolved until after the election. This was the only one that had a chance. And well, the problem that they have is that no one really gives a damn about that title, convicted felon. Either they don't care because they know it's all bull, or they legit don't care about it because they have family or friends who are felons and they resent the implication that it means that those are bad people. And for the record, I have a family member who is a convicted felon. He's a great guy. He did his time, he got out, and he's lived a perfectly clean life. Mistakes in our youth can, stick with you forever, but they don't have to be a permanent scar on your character. The Biden team, however, wants the law and order Republicans to drop Trump because of his conviction. And that's a wild play. But it's like when they out politicians and shame them for being secretly gay or something like that in some of the most vicious means possible. I mean, look at George Santos as the latest example of that. It shows you that for all the virtue signaling that the left does, that it's all for show, it's all theater. They don't care about any of that stuff or any of the real people behind those labels and titles. They only care about scoring political points. And they're perfectly willing to shame someone who is from some kind of fringe group, and they may even be completely degenerate people, but they're more than willing to shame those people if that person espouses some kind of right-leaning political, politics. And sadly, the right is more than willing to go along with it. They have yet to learn that your rules and principles at some point along the way, unfortunately, they get tossed out the window when you're dealing with people who have no rules or principles. This is not a fair game. It's a life and death struggle. It's a war of tooth and claw, and the last one standing determines the fate of the fallen. If we're not the last one standing, then humanity's lost. And I certainly understand and believe in principles and believe in maintaining our principles. But there comes a time when you have to do what has to be done. It's that serious, and I can't understate that. I hate that it's this level of fight. I wish it were not so. I wish it were simply people who could just agree to disagree. Or, hey, we have a disagreement on this. We don't agree with how this should be done or this should be done or whatnot. And all the conflict is over is, well, how should we spend tax money or whether taxes are legitimate or not. Those kinds of arguments. I wish that's all it was about. But it's so far from that we should be ashamed for even considering that it's the same. This is an existential fight for the soul of humanity. And if we lose this fight, then our world will descend into darkness and slavery, and your children and grandchildren may represent the last tacitly free people on earth for a very, very long time coming. Yeah, it's that bad. It's that serious. And like him or not, Trump is who we have. He's a terrible champion. He's a terrible leader. The fact is, we should not be saddled with him. We should have far better people. But we don't. Donald Trump has far better followers than he deserves. But that is what we have to depend on. This last week on vacation, I learned a lot of things. And some of those things I'll be talking about in the near future. Leaders are made or unmade by their followers. Donald Trump is not going to lead us alone into the future. We will have to carry him on our shoulders. And that's fine. He can be there getting the cheers, getting the glory, getting the credit. Doesn't matter. We all know that it's the guys on the ground who are doing the heavy lifting that made it possible. That's why you need to get that in your head right now. Get your arms around that. Get your brain around that. Stop thinking that he is going to do it for you. You will have to do it for him. You have to do it for yourself and for your children and for your children's children. He's going to get the credit, but who cares? Who cares? You and yours, you will live in the rewards. And that is all that matters, 100%. Now that's all I got time for this week. Like and subscribe. Come see us over on Gab, Nice Crew, and the dry dock for the mothership over at the Cold Fury blog. And I will see you on the next episode.